Welcome to the diner, and thank you for checking out this edition of Burgers and Fries, a podcast where we talk largely pop culture, but when we need to, we will try to talk about other things, sometimes things that are controversial. In this case, it's definitely controversial. I'm Desert Coyote 22. You can call me Anthony if you wish. In this edition, we have the punk master of vinyl, Purplish Rain, aka DJ.
Yo, yo, yo.
And we have the brony who is not named Tony. It's MrPat.
Hello.
So what is your name, Mr. Pat?
Patrick or Pat, it don't matter.
Just taking a joke. It's all right. All right. Now we're doing this one because all three of us, we just watched Quiet on the Set, which is on HBO Max if you want to watch it. And it compelled us to give our thoughts on what we call the dark side of Nickelodeon. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, we highly recommend this documentary for anyone of the 90s, even if you were born in later, if you were from the 2000s. So if you grew up watching Nick during this time, yeah, you definitely did check this one out.
Oh, yeah.
And we will, of course, talk about Dan the Man Schneider and a bunch of other disturbing things that have come to light. And, you know, it's funny now, like we used to laugh at the legal troubles that Amanda Bynes and what Drake Bell went through. And now we're like, well, no wonder these people went nuts.
Yeah, I just really feel sorry for them.
Yeah, like this documentary, I think for a lot of people that maybe aren't too familiar or maybe don't really understand like the world of Hollywood, I think this documentary will, like, it makes me feel very empathetic. Like I feel really sorry for all of these cast members that had to go through just horrible shit.
Yeah. And you know, people make fun of the phrase, oh, my childhood's ruined because, oh, they don't make the shows like I like them. And oh, yeah, that's a dumb argument. Well, in this case, now our childhood is ruined because their childhood was ruined. We at least had a childhood. They didn't.
I knew so many people, and I was one of them too, that where we watched all of these shows. And I think the fact that now we know what we know that was going behind the scenes, I think it's going to be hard for us to look back at all these shows.
Yeah, I mean, I did a video looking back on the 90s Nicktoons, and this was obviously done before a lot of things came to light. Eventually, I'll have to do the 2000s Nicktoons. Eventually, I'm going to have to do the 90s live action shows, the 2000s live action shows, worst to best, blah, blah, blah. And now with all that stuff coming to light, it's going to be really hard to have to revisit all that.
Yeah.
We're going to, of course, bring up Dan the Man, a.k.a. the fat guy from Good Burger, the white fat guy.
Yep. Dan getting the Van Schneider.
Dan, show me your toes, Schneider.
Yep. Show me your toes and I'll blow low Schneider.
What'd you say, Pat?
The man that eats all the profits, that's why he's fat.
Wait, he's no longer profiting, so that's why he's no longer bloated?
Right.
So, again, if you were watching from the mid-90s through the 2010s, and if you were watching shows like All That, The Amanda Show, Zoe 101, iCarly, you were definitely watching a show that Dan Schneider was behind the creative force.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that man he created pretty much every single live action show. It's like you couldn't go on Nick without seeing his name plastered on every.
I don't know, but you know what's even disturbing is now at the beginning of the Amanda Show, where Amanda says, "Love you, Dan."
Yeah, that's
the one where he's in the jacuzzi with him. Yeah, I'm surprised that even made it into the show.
I know.
That's a moment that aged really poorly. So I won't lie, a lot of this stuff, I've been aware of the rumors of Dan Schneider for years. Right around the time it was made public that him and Nickelodeon split ties. That was back in early 2018, so I would have been a junior in high school. But I will say this documentary really, really opened up a lot to me. I mean, I knew that he was a very manipulative and a very perverted man, but I didn't necessarily realize like some of the behind the scenes stuff with the writers that was going on or how he treated how he treated like female writers, and how like maybe some of his casting choices as far as roles, especially in All That, were a little questionable. Like I didn't realize that, and I actually didn't really know all that much stuff about kind of the scandalous stuff that was going on during All That they touched on in the first episode. I didn't really know about that stuff.
So it mentioned how he had two female writers split a salary, so getting two writers for the price of one. Then these female writers have come forward talking about the remarks that he used to make, threats to their careers, making one writer quit after starting a rumor about her having a past job doing phone sex.
Yeah. And also we can't forget the massages. And this was throughout his entire career too.
Yeah.
But that's just very, very like inappropriate work environment.
I mean, it was so bad that even one of the former costume workers who was revealing details, she was afraid to show her face. And because oftentimes it would be these people from wardrobe or costume people that would be giving massages to Dan when he was on the set.
Disgusting.
Yes. Cast members basically said that, if you were not on Dan's good side, then he really wasn't that nice to work with. One, shocking one was that Katrina Johnson used to be the youngest girl on that show. I remember when she was the little girl on All That. That's how far back I remember. And then a few years later, then of course, Amanda Bynes came on, and Amanda Bynes then was the youngest one. And she revealed that once Amanda Bynes was in there, then she was no longer Dan's favorite, as she said. And then things that were eventually promised to Katrina were eventually given to Amanda.
Yeah, and it was just such a poor handling too. Like she was let go because they said that they thought she was getting fat, and then they ultimately let her go because she was maturing into a teen. And this is kind of unrelated, but I gotta say, Katrina Johnson nowadays, she is fine as fuck.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. And so it's like, it really is just sad that something that naturally our bodies do, she was fired from her job because of it.
Well, that's even more disturbing because Katrina Johnson actually started looking like a woman, as she had said. And oh, no, take that away. No, we can't have an adult woman on the set or someone who looks like an adult. Take it away.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. Again, you had, according to Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, she doesn't name the guy. She calls him the creator. But according to the memoir, this creator pressured her to drink alcohol when she was still below drinking age.
Yeah, and I haven't read the book, but I have seen that highlighted. It was something I read where it was like he pressured her to drink alcohol to kind of like be edgier than the Victorious cast, which is like I don't really get that. Like what is that supposed to do?
In the notes said Dan Schneider was apparently rumored to be the father of Jamie Lynn Spears' daughter. However, this isn't explored on much in the documentary.
It wasn't even mentioned in the documentary.
Yeah, now that is something that was brought up kind of a lot. And if you go back on YouTube and look up some of the videos from around the time that Dan Schneider left Nickelodeon, it was brought up as a possibility. I can't imagine it's true, but it definitely it hasn't been confirmed or unconfirmed. But if it is true, like that just shows depravity at its absolute worst.
Would that have meant that Dan Schneider would have committed underage rape or statutory rape?
Yes.
Huh. Were there ever any investigations into that?
In around like 2017-ish, there was an investigation into Dan Schneider, but the only thing that the network found was that he was just difficult to work with, but nothing sexual that they found. But again, this was also back in 2017, and who also knows like what maybe he could have been doing outside of that.
If you're in power and if you have so much of it, you have your ways of hiding shit. Who really knows? But there were a variety of other reasons that we kind of already touched up upon prior to Jamie Lynn Spears even being considered a Nickelodeon cast member. I remember when I used to rant about Nickelodeon, when I was like, oh my God, it was so much better in the good old days. Because at the time I was ranting about Nickelodeon, that's when you had shows like iCarly and Zoe 101. And I remember trashing Nickelodeon for having a girl get pregnant at 16. But then you look at this in 2024, and they had a huge problem sexualizing these teenage girls on Nickelodeon. And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I wasn't watching Nickelodeon at that time.
Yeah, you were definitely right in your prediction there, Anthony.
Yeah.
But it has been said that Dan had a foot fetish that was subliminally there.
I remember seeing those jokes when I was younger, and once you got to like iCarly and Victorious, it seemed to be an abundance of foot jokes. And looking back from then, like I didn't think of it as much, but now it's like, what the fuck?
Oh God, zooming in on the feet. And then the Nickelodeon logo at one point was a fucking foot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can't believe it. It's
not only that, you had him zooming in on shots of them licking things with their tongue.
Oh.
Like what? And then even as far back as the 90s, like Leon Frierson mentioned that he had a Noseboy costume, which in hindsight had a costume that looked very phallic. Again, and then names with origins that reference productive parts. Like when I was probably 10 or 11 years old when Amanda's show came out, I had no idea what Penelope Taint meant.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that character.
I always thought it was Penelope Tate.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. That's how I heard it.
And the fact, like, not only is it called Taint, but Dan Schneider, like, was very much like, very much almost kind of, it sounded like he was almost proud of the fact that he snuck in a dirty joke behind like, Nickelodeon censors.
It's a reference to the taint.
I didn't know what a taint was back then. I don't think kid would. Most people should have. So it's like, that just tells me there, like, this man is a fucking sexual deviant.
Oh, God. And then speaking of sexual deviant, then you had the squirt shots, like the infamous one that's on Jamie Lynn Spears that became a GIF that circulated everywhere after it happened.
Yeah.
And, they elaborated on set. Alexis Nichols was basically like, the male people on set were like in the background joking, saying, oh my God, they just did a CUM shot. And she, being a virgin at the time, doesn't know what the fuck it meant.
Sickening.
And then speaking of sickening, okay, do you really want to see minor teenage girls sometimes in skirts too short for comfort? Because they were definitely wearing that on those shows. And then sometimes they'd be in bathing suits.
Is this another cuties issue?
This is the cuties issue 20 years before cuties became an issue.
Oh boy.
And then there's the infamous clips of Ariana Grande going around where she's having to quote juice a potato.
Watching the clip of that they showed in the documentary and like her pouring water all over herself and like hearing the sounds, like I'm not gonna lie, I felt dirty. Like I wanted to take a shower right after seeing that. Like it felt gross.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is something that I'm going to be bringing up. It actually has nothing to do with the documentary, but it is something that I can bring to light on a separate note. And it has to do with this episode of iCarly titled I Fight Shelby Marks. Now, let me just point out that there are lots of men whose choice of adult entertainment has to do with women in combat and women in combat sports, such as boxing, wrestling, and MMA. If you get my drift, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why do you think men might get a rise from that?
Let's see. Is it sports bras?
Yes. Revealing attire, gym shorts, even tighter than that. Even if it's not meant for sex appeal, some men cannot help it, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, I'm even admitting in this rant, I knew before my adolescent years that's what I liked. And let's just say, I know what I like and I don't like, but it always involved adults.
I'm not the biggest sports person, I'll admit. Women around my age that wear sports outfit can be pretty hot.
Exactly. So imagine my surprise as a 21-year adult back in 2009 when news among the quote communities on these Yahoo groups was revealed. And there were promotional stills of these two 15-year-olds in sports bras and fight attire.
Gross.
Yes, even if the finished episode was mostly played for laughs on a kid's show, it isn't exactly something I wanted to see 15-year-olds in.
I just did a spit take. I'm like, what?
Oh God, it's there. And I remember just thinking, why would they have something like this? I mean, if you're still a minor, whatever, and you don't think anything of it, but it led to people in these groups going, they're 15 for God's sakes. These promotional stills shouldn't be anywhere near these private adult groups.
Yes.
Oh, again, who wrote this episode?
Dan Schneider.
Yes. So now that a bunch of that behavior's come to light, now it makes sense. And again, what's even worse about this is I have seen various pieces of art on DeviantArt. These people are making adult-themed images depicting Jeanette McCurdy.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, of all the people to fantasize and depict doing God knows what on the internet for everyone to see, you picked the one who quit acting due to her abusive relationships with her mother and Dan Schneider as told in her book? What the fuck is wrong with people?
Yeah, they can get that shit out of there.
Yes, good God. There's plenty of women you can do whatever you want with, fantasize with, but leave her out of this. Jeanette, leave her alone. So yeah, these shows were supposed to be for kids. So why did we need minors speaking sexual innuendo and doing things that was borderline sexual innuendo? What the hell was this shit for?
Some people will probably find jailbait out of this shit.
Yes. So why did we need borderline jailbait on these shows? They can say, oh, it's not for the adult men. It's for the boys so they can develop crushes on the girls. No. Guys, when we were teenage boys, who did we usually have crushes on? Adult women.
Yeah.
We didn't want to see teenagers in revealing outfits. We wanted to see adult women in revealing outfits.
Amen.
Yes. You know what? Yeah, I used to praise a lot of the old Nicktoons for having some adult humor in it. Like, yes, Rocko's Modern Life on more than one occasion had jokes that were censored for sexual innuendo. But, good God, these cartoons back then, with the exception of Ren and Stimpy, that cartoon can go to hell. The innuendo in these jokes from the 90s were much more tamer compared to what these shows like Zoe 101, Victorious, and iCarly were doing. And again, these were minor teenage girls actually doing this. They were being sexually exploited on national TV, on cable. So yeah, Diane Schneider, oh no, he all of this was written and spoken and done, approved by executives and standards and practices, and their parents and caregivers were watching on set. He's saying that as he's stuffing his 30 Claire down his mouth. But once again, who would approve of this?
Some sick fucks on the exec board. That's who would approve of it.
Yes. Oh, they're kids. They don't know any better. Oh, the jokes were in there because the kids found it funny. That's not a good enough argument when it's adults who wrote the jokes. It's adults who worked with and filmed these kids, and they controlled what the kids said and did on TV. And as Alexa Nicholas said in one of her YouTube videos, when adults are in control of the jokes, you can manipulate the child into receiving the image content in a way that has an impact on them. And you can blame, if you want to say the parents knew on it, well, they probably did, but they were probably getting threats, or they probably were thinking, it's bad, but this is my little angel's chance to make it big in Hollywood, and they'll get ruined if they don't do it. And as we're about to talk about, as much as they say that these kids were protected, we're going to talk about kids who fell victim to sick behavior. Yeah. Ready for this, guys?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Okay. Now, who was Jason Handy? He was a production assistant who he befriended a lot of the young talent on set. One of them even mentioned that he would join them in Bible study with them.
So he was a Christian at one point.
Claimed to be a Christian, right? He went as far as hanging out with them and even exchanged numbers and emails directly to them. Now, I am a former ice hockey coach. I've coached youth sports for a good chunk of my life. someone who has had to follow strict safe sport rules in place. You do not send text messages, emails, etc. to minor talents. If any dialogue is to be said to or them, it's through a medium. It's either through the parents via phone or in person with their parent as a witness. You also do not accept friend requests from them on social media. There's definitely things that you as an adult are not supposed to do to protect these kids from being exploited. But then, according to a mother of an 11-year-old girl who was working on the Amanda Show, guess what this guy did, Pat? Or you pretty much know what this guy did.
Emailed this poor girl a nude picture of himself jacking off. And traumatized her that she never acted again.
Ugh. Good God. Thankfully, law enforcement, they did get tipped off on his inappropriate behavior. And then he got convicted when they found a ton of CP in his home, journals of his pedophile thoughts, and even some Ziploc bags that contained tokens from girls he knew, including a 7-year-old's underwear.
That one, when that came up, that I almost threw up when I heard about that.
My God, yeah. And again, Jason got arrested in April of 2003. And then 4 months later, another person got arrested for the same shit. Which brings us to Brian Peck.
Also known as Pickle Boy.
Yes, so if you were watching those shows and you remember Pickle Boy and those lame-ass skits, credited as a dialogue coach for the cast. And again, he was another person that they all trusted enough to the point where he played video games with them. His parents trusted him enough. They all went to his house and did parties at his house.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of person leaves these children in with this guy?
That's creepy. A lot of people I've noticed online have kind of been like attaching to the fact that he was pen pals with John Wayne Gacy. And it's like, that's creepy, but that doesn't even scratch the surface of this guy.
It really doesn't.
And I will say, so I didn't really know about the Jason Handy stuff all that much. Brian Peck was someone that I had heard rumors and murmurs about. Well, not even rumors. He was convicted, but it wasn't until this documentary that everybody got to learn like who it was that he got arrested for.
Yes, and it was not until this documentary came out when someone we used to hold dear to our hearts came forward, and it was Drake Bell.
That was pretty much the main focus of the third episode of that documentary, and I will say that episode was the hardest to watch.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I remember when Drake and Josh was on the air when I was a littler kid, and I loved that show. And
he touched up on the Totally Kyle skits, and even I had a little chuckle when he mentioned one of them. Like, he was a talented dude. He was a talented actor, a talented musician. Drake Bell's dad, who was his manager at the time, he actually saw the warning signs. Like, he saw this coming and noticed how this guy, Brian Peck, was getting uncomfortably close to Drake, being too touchy-feely to him. And what's really disturbing is when Drake Bell's dad tried to approach the higher-ups on set, you know what they immediately did, guys?
They just said that Brian is gay. You're probably just being homophobic.
Wait a minute, doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't it feel like they do that a lot nowadays?
Yes.
Yeah. And what I have to say about that is, gay or not, no adult should be touchy-feely with any child.
Absolutely not. You do not lay your hands on someone's kid. You just do not.
No.
Oh, I don't want this guy touching my kid in the compromise. Oh, you must be a homophobic and a bigot. I don't want little girls to be sexualized. Oh, you're just a right-wing hater. When did protecting kids become right-wing and homophobic?
No. I think it should be pretty universal that abusing kids is wrong.
Really? Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, because Brian Peck noticed that his dad was onto him, he was able to manipulate Drake to fire his dad, give all control to Drake's mother, who really didn't want to be involved. And then Drake's mother basically allowed Drake to be with this guy alone in his house. Where do you think that's going to lead?
Crazy, horrible shit.
Yes. And again, it wasn't just one thing, it was a repeated pattern that got worse. And again, the arrest, this stuff happened in 2003. I was a freshman in high school, still somewhat watching Nickelodeon, but on my way out, I had more access to the internet than a lot of people did at the time. And I had no idea about this stuff until this documentary.
Yeah. Nickelodeon must have had great lawyers and great NDA agreements, because if this shit would have popped out, there's a good chance maybe the Me Too movement would have started way earlier with this.
Oh, without a doubt. Or some kind of movement to protect minors in the entertainment industry, something.
Yeah.
So if one good attribute of the Me Too movement is, yes, there have been some sick people that have got what's coming to them. But the problem when it comes to this asswipe, he only got 16 months in prison. This dude basically raped Drake Bell and he got 16 months in prison.
Yeah. And it's also pretty sickening too. Because, I mean, there have been people who have had drug offenses that have gone to jail for way longer. And the fact that he was also like a higher up and he got charged for and he only went to jail for what he had been charged with. I mean, I think if it was a regular person, he would have gotten years in prison, which, I mean, I think he deserves the fucking death penalty, but that's besides the point.
Without a doubt. And again, he had to register as a sex offender. And yet, even after he was registered as a sex offender, he was still able to get hired by fucking Disney to work on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yep. Great job on checking backgrounds.
So-called happiest place on earth.
And again, they said it was only voiceover work, and then he got fired once they learned of his conviction. But that's still a fuck up on Disney's part. Just speaks volumes on how corrupt the entertainment industry is. In fact, they revealed there were a list of letters to the presiding judge in support of Brian Peck. Some of these from notable people in the industry, including the guy who played Cyclops in X-Men at the time.
That really just stuck with me and broke me.
He's been in the Sonic movies. It's like he's been in movies I like. Now I have to hate this guy.
One thing that really stuck out to me in this part too was Drake's testimony to the judge. He pretty much was like you guys will have to live with seeing me on trial, and I will have to live with the memory of what Brian Peck did to me and having to look at all you guys here on his side. Like, that fucked me up. That was wow. That was powerful.
It's also mentioned that he said that in the courthouse, the whole side for Brian was full. And on his side, it was just him, his mom, and his brother that was there. Like, good God, what is wrong with people?
Yeah.
So we're now going to get to Dan Schneider's apology and people's reactions to this. So Dan Schneider released an apology video on his YouTube channel, and not surprisingly, he immediately got a lot of flack for it. Why do you suppose that is?
Because you could clearly tell that it was just a pure PR move. And I'd be even willing to bet that apology was probably made and ready to go before the documentary even came out. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think he did know this documentary was coming out. And again, he had to have somebody that worked for him doing the interview. It wasn't even an actual journalist. It was one of his former employees. So that's pretty telling.
Yeah, it was Tebow from iCarly. And I don't think that guy has really done a whole lot since iCarly, but it just the fact that you have all these people coming out saying all this stuff, and then you've got this guy who's worked with him. I mean, he worked on the same show that Jeanette McCurdy was on, to the fact that he played it easy and played it safe with Dan Schneider and just asked easy questions makes me lose a lot of respect for that guy.
Oh, without a doubt. You can see some of the reactions made from former cast members too, like Alexa Nicholas's YouTube reaction. She has 1.2 million views reacting to the apology, which the original video on Dan's channel has 236,000 views. So more people are reacting to the reactions in the actual apology video.
Yeah.
But rightfully so. She is scathing over Dan's apology video. And it's basically because Dan is coming off as sounding like he was saying, oh, I'm sorry that I got caught, rather than I'm sorry that I did it.
I was going to say, if he probably would have gotten away with it, it almost comes off to me as like a sorry you feel that way kind of thing, which it's like, fuck that shit.
Yeah, the whole change the channel thing. Oh, we're sorry you all felt that way. So let's conclude. We're going to close this. We kind of all admit that this probably does change the way we think about those shows that we watched, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. That documentary, as much as that 4 hours gave us, it only told us part of the story.
Yeah.
It barely touched upon Jeanette McCurdy's tale, which you can read about in her book. There were also some other key players who declined to be interviewed. We would have loved to hear from Amanda Bynes about this.
Yeah.
Or other cast members of all that. So from Zoe, from iCarly, from Victorious, there's a lot of key players from these shows who probably have stories of their own.
Yeah. And one of the major ones that I think she was approached, but she ended up declining was Angelique Bates from All That. She was only on like the first 2 seasons of All That, but she was pretty much emotionally, physically, and mentally abused by her mom on the set of All That. And nobody, like everybody just watched. They didn't even come to her defense or anything.
And yeah, some of them may be doing fine. Like, Keenan and Kel are probably doing fine. But who knows what they had to go through when they made those shows. I think we'll always have good memories watching these shows from back in the day. And there might be a skit or joke that will make us laugh. But, when I eventually do have to revisit the 2000s shows and the 90s shows again for Coyote Rant content, it's not going to be as easy as we thought.
It's just really sad when you watch stuff as a kid or as a teen, and then you learn about the unpleasant things that happened. A lot of our childhood shows are just tainted with Dan Schneider's just bullshit and criminal behavior. Like, I just never thought it would be hard for some of us to be able to relive our childhoods. It doesn't go down the same.
It can be, I feel like it can be hard to separate the art from the artist. I enjoy some of those shows for what they are still, so I don't let it affect me that much. But I am still wary about the shows that have Dan's fetish and writing all over it.
I listened to Elvis and Chuck Berry, and they did some horrific stuff, but it's like when that stuff that you do comes into the shows and into the art, I think is maybe where it sits a little different.
It really just depends on what the person did and what the context is. Like, can I still enjoy an Iced Earth song despite John Schaefer being arrested for doing stuff at January 6th? Yes, but I have to acknowledge anytime I mention Iced Earth that yes, it is that guy. So please, if you listen to this, if you grew up watching Nickelodeon, or if you're someone maybe hoping to make it into the entertainment industry, or even is thinking about having your children in it, I don't know, see this documentary before you think anything otherwise. With that said, the diner is closed. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully we will see you again. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a like and subscribe for more burgers and fries at the diner. I'm Desert Coat 22. Thank you for listening.